Sorry, I'm reaching over you. Okay, so in this video I'm going to be doing a discussion of a essay by Martin Heidegger called Was ist Metaphysik, or What is Metaphysics? This book is existentialism from Dostoevsky to Sartre. It has a lot of texts in it that Kaufman has edited and translated. Well, I'm not sure if some of them I'm pretty sure, and I know he translated, but not all. And I know that there are a lot of things in here. There's I'll read them. I'll read off to you. This is basically, I mean, when I was taught existentialism and phenomenology, this was one of the textbooks that just was for existentialism. In this book, you have texts from texts written by Dostoevsky, Kierkegaard, Nietzsche, Rilke, Kafka, Ortega, Jaspers, Heidegger, Sartre, and Camus. So I'd like to go over some of the things from Sartre at some point, so I think hopefully in the future I'll be going over some things from Sartre. But in this essay, he kind of asks first, what is metaphysics? The question leads one to what to expect a discussion about metaphysics. Such is not our intention, so he's not going to talk about metaphysics itself. He's going to kind of talk about being itself. Metaphysics does have to do with being, but it's not about being itself. Metaphysics does have to do with being, so that's kind of where he's coming off. This little diagram I made, which I was going to use a board, but my fiance's in there. She doesn't really feel very good, so I'm going to let her have the bed, which the bed's in there. So I'm not here in my living room doing this. So I'll talk about this diagram here in a bit. What he's kind of arguing here, and also being in time, is another thing. The main thing to read if you want to understand Heidegger's phenomenology, as well as his ontology and his hermeneutics, and also his existentialism. But this essay is like a good starter to kind of get at some of like the way he talks about things. This is a pretty lucid translation, I would say. I think it's really nice. Unfortunately, my German isn't good enough to read the original Heideggerian text. So, what's going on here is he's talking about the what is. He's talking about being itself. In this essay in a much shorter form, he's trying to get at being itself. In Being in Time is where he really tries to uncover the meaning of being. He tries to establish and uncover a fundamental ontology. And he does that by looking at being in the world, Dasein. To understand the world, one has to, in a way, understand man and consciousness and existence itself, because of the way things are linked up. He doesn't say it that way, but one way I like to explain Heidegger is that he's explaining things as being linked up, where it's not I'm here, that's there. It's I'm here, I'm a being. I'm an instantiation of being in the world, where this world is part of who I am. And it's almost founding or giving a foundation for, the world, a objectivistic, realistic world through man himself. But it's not a idealistic way of doing things. It's more of a phenomenological way of doing things. More the way Husserl did it, but however Heidegger took it and put his own spin on it through ontology and saying existence before essence. So Heidegger is talking about how to understand the what is, to understand being itself, how to understand how one does science, how one talks about doing science, and what science is. And that kind of comes down, the what is being science boils down to design itself, to man, to consciousness. Consciousness is not the way that he would say it. Bewusstsein is not the way that he would say it. He doesn't use the word Bewusstsein or consciousness when he's talking about design, because design is different from that, but still, the way I would look at it, the way I think is a good way to look at it, is still that he's trying to explain consciousness, trying to explain being also. Being in a way, in understanding being through consciousness in that phenomenological way, but doing it his own way, not Husserl's way. So, kind of, the project begins with the presentation of a metaphysical question, then goes on into its development, and ends with its answer. Firstly, every metaphysical question always covers the whole range of metaphysical problems. So before we're going to talk about things like properties and stuff like that, things that metaphysics actually does discuss, we have to have a foundation, a thing that covers all of those, not just about properties and things like that. In every case, it is itself the whole. Secondly, every metaphysical question can only be put in such a way that the questioner as such is by his very questioning involved in the question. From this, we derive the following pointer. Metaphysical questioning has to be put as a whole and has always to be based on the essential situation of existence, which puts the question. We question here and now on our own account. Our existence, a community of scientists, teachers, and students, is ruled by science. What essential things are happening to us in the foundations of our existence now that science has become our passion. So he wants to talk about this world relationship, the relationship between us and the world, and how the world and ourselves are linked up, and he tries to sort of get at existence through that, tries to uncover things about the world through talking about existence, whether that mostly boils down to Dasein. What is Dasein? Dasein translates German from German to being there, and translates to being there. So you can talk about it as Dasein. Dasein is Heidegger's way of looking at man. Consciousness in some way, but not others. But it is one way of him looking at man. Dasein is his way of looking at existence, being there. The instantiation is the situation of being there, being here, being there. And that is man itself. And in doing science, we have to understand things about us, about man, about Dasein, about being in the world before we can go on and talk about metaphysical things in the world. And this essay kind of goes from talking about things like the what is, being, science, to talking about the nothing or negation. He kind of comes towards talking about non-being. But it is not remarkable that precisely at that point where scientific man makes sure of his possession, he should speak of something else. What is to be investigated is what is and nothing else. Only what is and nothing more. Simply and solely what is, and beyond that, nothing. But what about this nothing? Is it only an accident that we speak like that quite naturally? Is it only a manner of speaking and nothing more? But why worry about this nothing? Nothing is absolutely rejected by science and abandoned as null and void. But if we abandon nothing in this way, are we not by that act really admitting it? So we kind of come back to this riddle of the Plato's beard, which I've discussed in my video about Quine's article on what there is, where if we're talking about being, about what there is, we are also admitting that there is a non-being of what there is not. So if we are saying that something is not there, aren't we also kind of in a way saying that there's some existence laid in there? And I think would think yeah. And I think that non-being, the way that I would answer the riddle is to not answer it. Is to say that being is being as well as non-being, and kind of like Sartre's in this book, being and nothingness, where he talks about negation, where he says that we can see nothing in the world. We can see negation in the world. Where his example is if he's gonna meet Pierre, his friend Pierre, at the cafe at a certain time, and he's at the cafe and Pierre isn't. That's absence. That's Pierre not being there. Pierre is not there. That's something that is not. So that, in a way, is Pierre. The whole state of affairs of Pierre not being there is being. That is an existence. So negation, according to Heidegger, is an active reason, and negation. Well, first of all, can we talk about nothing when we're doing science? Most science, most naturalistic kinds of sciences would say no. Science, on the other hand, has to assert its soberness and seriousness afresh and declare that it is concerned solely with what is. Nothing. How can it be for science anything other than a horror and a phantasm? Okay. So, upon talking about all this stuff like science and stuff like that, he kind of stumbles on this idea of the nothing and kind of elaborates into that. Negation is a active reason, where you kind of, in a way, make null and void the what is, or understand something that is not, or ponder into something that is not. So what Heidegger says is that nothing can itself seep into being. And that can happen whether we're looking at something in the world, but it can also happen with ourselves, our own being. That can happen with Dasein itself. And just like how Heidegger talks about angst or dread in Being and Time, he does discuss angst or dread in this writing. Fear is, as I've said this many times in many videos, there's a spider in the bathtub. You know what's causing that emotion of fear. You know how to eradicate that fear. Kill the spider. Put it outside, whatever. However, with dread or angst, you don't know what's causing it. You have just this dreaded state of mind, this dreaded mood, this horrible thing hovering inside of you. It is a state of mind. It's a mood, according to Heidegger in Being and Time. However, it's not like the spider. You don't know what's causing it. So therefore, you can't understand it. You can't eradicate it. There's a way to prevent that from happening. However, within yourself. And Heidegger and de Beauvoir and Sartre and Camus discuss how to prevent dread from occurring, and that's to not allow the nothing to seep into your own being. And the way that de Beauvoir or being, and the way that de Beauvoir or Camus would say that you shouldn't let nothingness seep into your being is to be authentic. One is to be authentic to yourself. Be authentic to ambiguity or absurdity of the world and thus your life, and be free that way. Don't be crushed when something goes wrong, because you understand that that's the way the world is, that's the way life is. That's a simpler way of saying it. But nothingness or non-being, according to Heidegger, seeps into your being. And that can be a horrible state of mind to be in, a horrible situation. Dread reveals nothing. Dread strikes us dumb. In dread we are in suspense, or to put it more precisely, dread holds us in suspense because it makes what is in totality slip away from us. Hence we too, as existence in the midst of what is, slip away from ourselves along with it. For this reason it is not you or I that has this uncanny feeling, but one. In the trepidation of this suspense, where there is nothing to hold on to, pure Dasein is all that remains. So it's kind of, he discusses that further, how one can fall into the they, or be drowned by the they, and not even be a you or a I anymore. So I can talk about this, a lot. I can talk about how, the way he talked about this in Being in Time, and how he talks about how if you are not in a state of being towards death, how that can be another way that nothingness can seep into your being, and thus you can have a feeling of dread which can strike you dumb. But nothingness is a thing that can occur in the world, but more importantly in yourself, and that can cause, almost dilute yourself. It's almost dilute you, almost to the point where you're not even you anymore. But you're still you, So that's kind of hard to comprehend. But I'm trying to think how else I can supplement this discussion. If you are in a state of being which is not authentic to yourself, that's also another way that nothingness can seep into your being. There are many ways that the existentialists like Sartre, Heidegger, Camus, de Beauvoir can talk about, which can seep into your being, how the nothing can seep into your being and make things harder, make this whole feeling of dread or angst strike you dumb. So let me know if you think I messed something up or left something out in a discussion of this essay.